If I had an unlimited budget, I would focus on user experience and truly understanding the reach of the customer before I did anything else. It doesn't matter if you've got $1 billion spent on a website that doesn't talk in the way that your customer wants to hear, that doesn't show them the value that they would get from doing business with you. It's money wasted.
Welcome to the B2B Digital Marketer Podcast, a podcast helping you to end your struggle with digital marketing, helping you to pave a new and better path to target and capture your ideal customer. Each week, we teach you how insiders and experts debunk the dreary and become engines of innovation. Now, here's your host, Jim Rembach.
Okay, B2B DM gang, I'm excited because we're going to have a great discussion today about, how you go about creating those brand advocates and look at it from a different perspective that you may not have done that before. Because I have Andrew Deutsch on the show with me today. Andrew, welcome.
Hey, thanks so much for having me on.
Hey, okay, so now before we get into a little bit of background about you, let me ask this question because I think it's important for us to kind of set the stage. But, how can a B2B organization build advocates for their brand?
It's very simple. First of all, every single employee, outside contractor, anyone who's within your four walls, your parking lot, and your sphere are part of the marketing team and part of the customer service team. So when you have all of those people sold on the value of your company, they portray that in everything that they do. So that's step one. Step two is stop thinking that you know your customer and go meet them. And what I mean by that is actually ask them, why do you do business with us? Ask people who no longer do business with you, why did they run? And more importantly, talk to those guys who sometimes do business with you, sometimes with your competition. And ask in a very qualitative way, not just send out a survey that nobody wants to fill out, and understand who is your customer or customers and what matters to them. What are the problems, challenges, desires, and otherwise that you can solve? And then you dig in after knowing that as to how you differentiate against all other solutions for those same problems and in a way that matters to that customer or customers. That's the core concept of how to do it.
Okay, so let us know and tell us a little bit about you and your background and how you have relevance and expertise in that particular area.
Oh, I'm supposed to have relevance and expertise?
Yes, man. That's why you're on the show.
Oh, nobody told me. No, my background is unusual. I started with an education in global trade to a market that had no opportunities for anyone without grad credentials. If you didn't have a master's or PhD, nobody was talking to you. But at the same time, every master's guy I knew was unemployed. So I went back to school. And to really focus on that global marketing concept that I wanted to do, I studied psychology and worked actually as a therapist for a number of years while I was building my business practice. So we began doing all sorts of really interesting global trade initiatives in Central America where I had made contacts, which grew into a project that was supposed to last 90 days in the south of Brazil, where I went and ended up living for 10 years. So during my time in Brazil, helping a market that had just opened for import, I was able to really hone my skills in a way that I could have never done here in the US, and really began to understand those multicultural dimensions of understanding that customer. Because the very go-to-market strategy we could build for a company here in the US could be completely useless in a foreign country based on their culture, their needs, and what they view as the value in a company they do business with. So that was part of it. And then when I came back to the States in 2003 and ran a dual operation where I had an office here in the US and continued with my business in Brazil, around 2007, the market started to fall apart because of the collapse. And I went to work as an executive for a manufacturer in the industrial packaging space. And I ran there. They were a client of mine who I had opened the doors to in Latin America. And I ran that division for a number of years and ended up taking them from about 12, 13 countries into 75 different countries in less than 5 years, as well as a bunch of other initiatives that were involved. but they went from, I think it was 3.2 to 14 million in sales in that time, and developed my network globally that now is part of what we do. So people come to us and they want to build a strategy truly based on their customer focus, which we do before we let them even talk about tactics. We build that strategy with them, and then we grab those tactical tools to make it go forward. But that strategy can vary region to region within our country. And then as it expands globally, we can do the viability work and help them gain a positive footprint anywhere that they want to go, that they have a viable product.
Well, and when I hear you talking about that and thinking about that journey, I start thinking about, well, what should a B2B digital marketer be asking themselves that you can help answer?
The first thing with and it's the biggest gap that I see in a lot of the B2B digital folks, is that they're so focused on metrics that don't matter and don't know how to look at the metrics that do. For example, I heard a pitch from a marketing agency that claimed to be B2B, and I was in the room because the guy wanted me in the room. I shouldn't have been there. The pitch sounded like this: we love what you guys do, and we think that we can build an incredible website and a logo that'll make your eyes pop. And that website, because of our SEO skills, can drive hundreds of thousands of people there every day and convert hundreds of leads a day to you. And the guy at the table, without giving away what the company was, is a very unique product within the aviation industry. And in the world, there's only a 400 or 500 possible customers for what he makes. That's it. So the question at hand is, if you're going to build a digital strategy for a unique, super niche product in a company that isn't interested in growing beyond that market, this is our bread and butter, this is what we do, we're not doing anything else, do you even need a digital strategy, or do you need a placeholder website as a branding statement and a sales team that's consistently talking to those 400 potential customers in the world, and maybe a marketing team that's going out and looking to see if maybe there's new players in the game? So if every day you come into work and you pull up your analytics, you go, oh my God, we got 100,000 people on the website today, and then you don't go to the sales team and say, did you get any new leads? Did you sell anything? You're missing the point of what digital marketing is about.
I think that's a good explanation. And that example, just like you said right there, just kind of gives credence into, different needs, perspectives, and what can be perceived as value.
Yep.
So thanks for sharing that. But I have to ask, based on, what you've shared as far as, journey and story, and what a B2B digital marketer should be asking is, how in the heck does a patent for a hybrid wine barrel come into play?
So I was doing a project for a manufacturer of plain old steel drums for the 55-gallon steel drums. You could have any size you want as long as it's 55 gallons. And they were used for the chemical, the coating, and all those industries. And there was an opportunity to acquire a company that manufactured stainless steel barrels for very specific applications. They're very high priced. It's a different animal. And in the research for it, we were talking to folks in the wine business, and they kept asking us about wooden barrels. And we said, well, why? Oh, there's a shortage of them. They're getting so expensive. The price is through the ceiling. Everybody's on, what's the word? Not allotment. I'll think of the word later, but they couldn't get them. And I said to one of the guys, well, what would happen if I was able to make you a stainless body with wooden ends, give you all the benefits of it just came to me with the wooden ends, so that you could reduce the amount of evaporation, still get your oak and your microoxygenation that you described that needs to happen. If we were to build those and test them and show that they worked, and the guy says, if you make those, you will change the industry. And the light bulb came above my head, and we went and made some prototypes. And before long, we recognized that there were so many advantages to wineries, craft brewers, and craft spirits manufacturers. One tree makes 3 wooden barrels in the oak barrel industry. Using these ends, one tree could make 100, because you don't need the prime pieces to make those huge staves that make up the body. So you reduced evaporation. I don't know if you know this, but in the spirits industry, when the guys at Jack Daniels or whatever fills the 55 gallon or the 48, whatever it is inside the barrel, when they get it out, There may be half of it there because of the evaporation process. Guess what? The taxes are paid on what went in, not what comes out. So there's a whole, I mean, I could go on for an hour just on that subject, but I won't. It was a brainchild that gained immediate traction in the market. And because I'm the one who had the little light bulb appear above my head, it became one of my patents. And of course, the company owns the patent because I was an employee at the time. But it's, all my life I thought, how cool would it be to be an inventor? And then I on multiple occasions I have been. So it's a lot of fun.
Well, I would have to suspect that, that has made them a pretty penny. Unfortunately, it was your idea, not your compensation as well.
It's part of the game. When you work for a company and you develop a product, you recognize up front that the ownership of that of the actual value of the patent is theirs, and I get the bragging rights, so I can.
Well, it's good bragging rights, and it's a great story. Thanks for sharing.
Yeah.
Okay, so you can see how all of this fits when you start talking about go to market, when you start talking about marketing, when you start talking about sales, and your deep expertise in that area. Both domestically and globally is, quite impressive from that perspective. And you have a lot to teach us. And so when I start, thinking about these different aspects that I've had the opportunity to hear you talk about, I've created some questions for you so that we can get into these a little bit deeper. I hope we get through them all. We'll see what happens. But I want you to kind of help us understand, what is predictive sales modeling versus sales forecasting?
Okay, well, sales forecasting is looking at your past data in a fixed moment in time, and then trying from that and looking at market trends to guess where it's going to be going forward for looking at your sales volume. When we put software in place, for example, with industrial distributors, what we call predictive modeling is an actual AI system that would allow you, once you understand the personas, and maybe, I'm getting into the weeds. Let me make it simple. We're in the business of selling cleaning chemicals to nursing homes. I use this example often. And we know that there's multiple personas of nursing homes. There are ones that absolutely love the elderly. They're dignity-based. They want them to end this world with dignity. And at the other end of that spectrum, there's that jerk who has a filthy hospital that just barely meets minimums, doesn't care about the old people, because as soon as the bed's empty, there'll be another body. And I know that's very cynical, but we also unfortunately know it exists. So if you know that there's those personas, and now I walk in the door, there's this AI system that has looked at 20 years of receivables and sales within these sectors. And we've pre-classified within the AI whether that customer was a 1, 2, or a 3. Let's just say there's 3 personas. Now I'm the new sales guy on the block, and I walk up to the door. And because I want to know, is this a 1, a 2, or a 3, I visually inspect and I ask a couple of very pointed questions that let me know. The AI will then look at all of the past customers within that mindset and say the products that are the most probable to be the first purchase if they go with you are A, B, and C. That's one scenario with it. The other is, I've been working with this company for years and I need to know, I want to sell more. The AI, as a predictive modeler, would say you've got an 80% chance that item number 6 will be what they'll add to their mix based on what others have done. Now, the beauty of the predictive sales model is it's learning all the time. So if 10 times in a row I offer that product and nobody buys it, it's already adapted and there'll be a different product suggested. So you think of it from a sales team. Imagine you work for a company with like a Grainger with, I don't know, billion SKUs. I don't know what the number is. What do your salespeople suggest? Where do you begin? Well, with this type of a model, a new sales team is hired. External salespeople for those big distributors, they'll hire 100 people to keep 10 because they can't get up to speed. This gets them up to speed right away. You lower that churn, you make people successful faster. You also have a team sitting on the phone, and somebody calls in and says, "Hey, we're placing our order." They, with the predictive model, can go, "Hey, can I send you a sample of this because we think you'd like it?" Or, "Can we add this to your mix?" "Oh, how did you know?" That's what predictive modeling is.
Well, and as you're talking, I start thinking about, the different variables and inputs that could be so valuable going into that. I can think about it from the marketing perspective, right? You're feeding into that model. I can think about it from the either customer service or client success, depending on your product and what you have, and that being fed back into the model. And that could be a true differentiator when you start looking at it from that perspective.
Well, the difference is nobody recognizes how important it is to value the yeses and the nos, the zeros and the ones. All of the no's put you in a different perspective. Also, I remember the first time that this came to me, I had gone to a big box retailer for home improvement, and I bought a gas grill. And every ad that came from then on was for a gas grill. And I thought, don't these knuckleheads know that once I buy one, I'm probably not getting one for a while, unless they know that they're garbage and I'm going to need one every year. Why not send me ads for spatulas, for covers, outdoor furniture, and those kinds of things? But with this AI system that we have, it may discover that 80% of the people who bought that gas grill and these plumbing fittings that I bought need a ladder. And I'll see a suggestion for a ladder and go, oh my God, I do need one of those. And I'm exaggerating the thing, but it allows salespeople to stop selling those 10 or 20 pages of the catalog they know so well and get them out of their comfort zone and start selling other things because the model is telling them. The other is that when new leads go in from the marketing department, we've discovered that our chemicals, our cleaning chemicals, are really good for kidney centers. It immediately gives you your initial play as to how to properly speak to those people at the model of the world based on the success pattern. And after the first 2 weeks, as people are starting to sell, their pluses and minuses will benefit the next visits going along. It's a constant living, breathing sort of learning machine. So it may be the sales team goes out on Monday for the first week going into kidney centers. We've never done it before, and we fail miserably. That's great. We now know how not to do it. And then the next week we do it a different way and we get some traction. Now we're starting to build that predictive model from zero. So that's, I think that's predictive modeling.
Well, yeah, well, and to me, it just, like I said, it galvanizes that whole need for the sales and marketing alignment component and what, all that data can do. A story that I heard is there was an RV organization, and they had somebody coming in who was new to the organization, doing some data analysis. And what he discovered is that every time somebody started buying like a retrofit kit or an upgrade kit for the interior for their RV, within a certain period of time, they actually traded it in and purchased a new one. Mm-hmm. And so what they started doing, marketing and sales working together, is that when somebody purchased one of those kits, or they knew with a certain timeline when that about happens and people start buying those, so they started marketing the kits. When people got the kit, they started marketing a trade-in, right? And their sales just skyrocketed, shot up.
Yep. Well, imagine, for example, if you had the ability to know the last month that somebody's automotive lease is up. Now the brand knows, because when you bought at Chevrolet, the lease is through Chevrolet Lease, and they have that data in hand, and there's other ways to get it. But Chevrolet is trying 6 months before to get you to upgrade then before someone else can come in and get you. But imagine if you're, even a used car lot, and saying, hey, I know your lease is up in the next couple of months. We'd like to buy the car from you and maybe help you get a new car lease through us cheaper than you can get at the dealership. But it's that data that allows you to predict, that a person near the end of their lease has a very high probability that they're going to need another car, whether they're going to buy a used one, buy a new one, lease a new one, or they're never going to get another car. But the probability of some sort of a purchase is much higher than I'm done driving.
That's for sure. Okay. So now we start talking about, I'd like us to shift gears a little bit and talk about, we have some strategy. We have, done some, whether it's go-to-market, marketing strategy and things like that, but ultimately we have to get to the point of, executing. And that seems to be a tipping point, for most organizations and where they most struggle. So when you start thinking about strategy moving into execution, what are some of the biggest barriers that organizations come across?
Well, if it's a strict digital play where you're expecting people to fill a cart and buy, it's a very different than when you're using your B2B digital strategy to sell a meeting, to get or to get someone to raise their hand. And there's a pendulum of different use. So for example, one of the executables that we create often when somebody's in the B2B space with what I would call a customizable product. So imagine I'm making I sell toolkits, and you get the case, and then I let you go through and pick to fill every drawer of the toolbox. So you can configure what's coming to you in that toolbox. Or imagine you're buying, we'll go back to that RV. I can pick all of the features, and of course that's not a B2B, it's a B2C play typically. But I allow you to pick what configuration of the four that are there, what fit and finish, what colors, and allow you to configure what you're doing. What I'm really doing is I'm advancing that whole sales process from curiosity to taking action towards the purchase. So there's a million different ways to do it. The one of the things that I always stress, and people think I'm nuts sometimes when I talk about it, is one of the biggest executable things when you're dealing with just a business where people are going to fill the cart and close, is reduce your clicks. Every time somebody has to click to go to the next step is one more opportunity for them to go, forget this. Ask anyone in your audience how many times they've gotten a survey and they've thought, yeah, I'll sit down and fill out the survey. And after about the 12th screen, they're like, done. And if you talk to people in the digital survey space, they'll tell you a huge percentage never get to the last page. And they have to design surveys to accommodate for that. So each of those is a different question. When you're trying to, and this is the most common for us in the B2B space, is there are physical salespeople who are going to get involved in the process. Don't try to do too much of it before the salesperson, the human being, gets involved. Use your B2B strategy to sell and confirm the meeting, because a virtual or a visiting salesperson, well-trained, who understands the sales process, doesn't need you to do much more than that. Now you can get people to configure stuff to warm up the lead and give it to them, but it's even when, in capital goods, I've never once seen a salesperson that could sell $1 million CNC station in one phone call. There's a process there. So and keep that in mind as you build. I can't tell you how many programs we've done over my career where all we wanted to do with our digital strategy was to sell the meeting.
Well, I think for me, when you were even talked about that example, when you sat in on that pitch, what they really were talking to was an organization that required, very high touch at a very high level. Mm-hmm. And so therefore they were talking like it was almost an e-com site, right?
Yeah.
And that was a huge mismatch.
Yeah.
So, that makes sense. What you just explained right there kind of puts all that together and makes it very tangible. Okay. Yes. So, but I think it's oftentimes an issue where you start, you kind of open the door right there. And so I want to talk about a little bit is, where does this handoff occur? So in other words, marketing is doing their part. And if you think about, and some people talk about funnel differentiation, meaning that, hey, this is the funnel that I have that I want them to go through, and this is the customer funnel. Yeah. They're not the same, right? We know that. And I think when you start talking about, building, a brand that people are just, advocates over, is that, we have to understand theirs more so than the one we want them to go through.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's really getting close to that customer, and you've established that. So
yeah, I think it's very rude of a customer to go all the way to signing the contract before I can do every step of the process. And I'm being sarcastic. How dare they agree before I do all my work?
I can tell you.
How dare they make it easy for me?
No, I have had that happen. So it's, and I would say that, and this is pre-COVID, but digital can, in the right circumstance, get to that point, because I received a phone call where somebody was telling me I was selected, and I'm like, who are you? So it can happen, but it's not the norm, and you shouldn't plan for it, because those are rare and few and far between. Okay, so what I really want to have us hone in on is that pass over the wall, or that transition of at what point does that lead get turned over from marketing to sales, and then therefore it's more qualified? Because I've even heard you talk about, and we've all probably experienced it, is that we start talking about this battle between sales and marketing about lead quality, right?
Yeah. Well, the simple answer to a complicated question is, at the moment that sales and marketing pre-agreed is the right time to pass the lead. So that doesn't mean that either one gets to decide. They decide together. So let me talk about a lead nurturing strategy that we've done to B2B marketing. We'll go back to the configurator. Imagine you're a manufacturer of some sort of a product that let's say pole buildings or sheds. And this is something that we've looked at in the past. So a customer goes on the website, goes on the website and he configures, I want this color door, I want this size, it's got to be able to have a ramp for my tractor, and they design their shed. The web then creates the model and a general idea of price, not including installation. Now, this particular company would take that lead and immediately send it to the zip code where they have a dealer and wait for the dealer to make the sale. Okay. What was discovered by us was most of those leads were never followed up on, even though they were, hand served to the dealership. And many times they had other brands on the lot and used this premium lead to turn it into a price customer and sell them a cheaper one they have higher margins on. So there was all of this sort of stuff that was happening in the dealership world with these buildings that they were making. So the decision was made to create what I call the lead warming or the lead nurturing team. So now when a lead would come in, we as the manufacturer would get in touch with the person, hey, we got your lead, we're configuring it. I want to make an appointment for you at the dealer. And in that time, we would gather even more. When are you ready to buy? How close are you? Are there any problems with your delivery? So now instead of sending it to Joe's barn shack in who knows where, Iowa, we would call them and say, the lead is in your email. They're coming in at 2:00 and they'll be asking for you. Please let us know how it goes. And then our lead warming team, knowing that visit was supposed to be on that day, 48 hours later would call the customer back. Hey, we had set you up that appointment. Were there any questions that were left unanswered? They went from, I want to say it was like a 5% conversion to almost a 55% conversion of leads coming off the website because they took control of that part of it. So, when's the appropriate time to turn it over to sales? When it's appropriate.
Wow, that's a huge impact. So, and I don't want to get into the weeds, but I have tons of questions from that in regards to, that whole downsell issue and things like that, and how
we'll take a sidebar later. Yeah,
we'll have to do a sidebar because I'm sure there's still a larger percentage of those that didn't convert. What was happening? And then you start getting into dealer issues and relationships, commission rates and all those kind of other things. So it can be quite interesting.
Yep.
Okay. So now, you had mentioned this earlier, and I want to get a little bit deeper into this. And you mentioned about being, in Brazil, and I think you speak Portuguese as a result.
Among other things.
Yes, I noticed that as well. And I think that's important is when you start talking about those perspectives, when you start talking about building the skill sets that enable you to get closer to the customer because because of those experiences, it's just not the same for everyone. So if you could tell me a little bit how traveling the world has really impacted your skill sets, that you can therefore transfer that on to client success or customer success.
Yeah,
for your clients.
The first part of it is, and folks who know me in a personal, they know that I'm beyond normal in levels of curiosity and comfort with difference. I thrive outside what most people would consider to be a comfort zone. So, the experiences and watching and observing and really being part of communities overseas, not just showing up and looking at monuments, has given me a different perspective on the world. You grow up in our culture of this, we're number one. And I choose to live in the United States because I love it here. But I also recognize people in other countries do things differently than we do. And it works and it's interesting and you can learn from it. So when you recognize that, and just in terms of dealing with business, you stop talking about B2B and B2C, it's B2H, they're humans. And to understand how those humans think and what matters to them, and also where they are and I joke about it, in the evolution of business. So for example, I did some work with a company that made paint spraying equipment for the construction industry. In the US, almost all of the commercial painters have this airless spraying equipment for painting structures. In Brazil, it didn't exist. So in the US, all of the marketing and sales collateral, all the stuff was about upgrading your equipment, expanding the number of pieces that you have, getting bigger, better, more efficient. In Brazil, it was a virgin market. So if you went into that market and started talking about the bigger, better, getting, buying another one, if you've got two in your thing, we'll give you a discount to add a third. You need more tips for all of that stuff. It was kind of like, well, I don't even know what this thing does. In Brazil, it was, there's no way you're ever going to sell that here because, labor here is so cheap and we're used to a roller and a brush, get out. So had you built your marketing strategy based on what works here, which is what they had been doing and why they were never selling, you fail. So we started going down to what is the value proposition that existed in the US and what was it, the 60s or 70s when that tech first came to market? And why did painters adopt it? Well, you can do a lot more work with a lot less people and a lot less time and have a better finish. So as a guy who can sell jobs, I could sell 10 times more jobs and not have to expand my crew. I could even reduce. And then the other part of it is painting equipment doesn't drink at lunch, doesn't get sick and not show up the day after payday, and all of those other things that were part of that pitch. And when folks saw us do a dog and pony show of being able to do the work of 10 in the time, a third of the time it would have taken them, it became exciting. And then there was a value prop to the paint manufacturers. Guess what? If I've got a roller and a brush, I'm going to use X number of gallons a day. The guy with this equipment, X times 10. You want to help? You want to certify your paints in the machine and start promoting, because the more machines we sell, the more paint you'll sell. And that became part of it. In the US, it's just been part of the language for 20, 30 years. So
I think that's a great example. And we often find that in a lot of different ways. When we start thinking about, go to market and adoption, and then also how we try to message and sell it, both, digitally as well as, from a sales perspective. And I know, you gave a lot of B2C and, we talked about, somebody even said B2P, business to people, business to human. And I think that's a differentiating factor for most. I actually heard you say something about one organization was able to create, customer advocates just because they answered the phone when they called.
Yeah. That was going back to the steel drum analogy. It was they thought that they were the number one quality manufacturer in the market, and that's why people did business with them, because they made the best drum. They had all of these testing facilities, and when we did the research, it turned out that's table stakes, like a poker game. All of the things that they were so proud of, if you didn't do them, you couldn't be in business. So when we did the qualitative studies, it turned out that the number one reason people did business with this company was because they answered the phone. Number two was because they have flexible manufacturing that the other ones don't. If I, as the buyer, have a shift in what I need, they're the only guys who can adjust their schedule and meet my need, which is huge. Shut down a plant because I don't have the containers for the products we're supposed to make. And the third was, which is interesting, when you guys goof or we have a defective product, I don't have to know the bureaucracy of your company. You immediately accept, study, and respond. And I don't have to do tons of silly paperwork and wait months for some bureaucracy that you've created. You treat me like an important customer and you make it easy for me. And when we started talking about that in the market, people that had never done business with them before or knew who they were and whatever were like, I recognize that. I hate this multinational I'm buying from. They always make my life miserable. And the last time we ran out of drums, I got chewed out. These guys won't let that happen. And they almost doubled, a little bit more than doubled the business. And the whole purpose was to sell the company. And
I think you bring up also a really interesting point that I think we all have to take away with is that it's just darn hard to evaluate yourself. I mean, you need somebody's ability to just kind of look at what you're doing. You need that coach, you need that mentor, you need that person to be able to say, yeah, I know. Let's think about this a little bit differently because
fresh set of eyes.
It's hard. Yeah, it's hard for us to do that. Okay, so now with that being said, we all have, like I just established, things that we've been doing on a regular basis. And oftentimes when we start talking about, transforming our marketing or transforming our sales, really when we start looking at that transformation, it's really just a little tiny adjustment instead of, a significant
sometimes
pivot. Now, sometimes that works, but when we start talking about the past couple of years and the things that have occurred, it's likely that that is not the case. Also, even when you started talking about, the revenue opportunities that were just leaving on the table, when you start talking about the way that our organization was structured and the way that we are doing things, I mean, a lot of that is just shifting right now. And like you said, a lot of the things when we start looking at our competitors, I mean, they're just table stakes, and we're promoting them as value propositions, and they're just not, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So when I start thinking about, all of these, ultimately, investments that we're making in our budgets and our budget allocations, if I'm a B2B digital marketer, what should I be thinking about, pulling money from and applying money to if I'm working within the same budget constructs?
Yeah. I'm a big proponent of reducing SEO spends on clicks and focus more on drawing people in through what you do. Content is still king. And people don't recognize the power of getting past the SEO. There was an experiment done. At this moment, I can't remember it, but someone tried. They named a website something that had nothing to do with the product, and then they did their whole strategy on driving people to a website that you would never think to click on. And they spent no money whatsoever, and they were able to drive people through viral video. This is more in the consumer space. Getting micro influencers to do things with it, and with Instagram and TikTok and all that crazy stuff, they proved it.
Well, and in all fairness, I mean, when you start talking about getting traffic, there is organic means and ways. There's paid means and ways. There's linking strategies. There's all kinds of citations. There's all kinds of different things that can happen in order for traffic to occur. Yeah. And then also you start talking about, well, what do I do based off of, am I that company that's a B2B company that only has 400 potential customers, right? I mean, there's all kinds of ways that it needs to be adjusted. Yeah. I think some fundamentals though still ring true throughout all this, and we've talked about many of those. It's getting close to that customer, understanding their funnel, understanding their needs, knowing what is table stakes and not pushing it. Because it really does, they can find that anywhere. I mean, all those are really important key factors that.
One more to add to that.
Yes.
Where they are.
Oh yeah.
That's very important. But again, one of the industries that always is a great model for sort of figuring this out. Think about the guys who make the promotional products. They put your logo on a mug. Every business out there might be a potential customer. Right. So if you're the sales guy for that company, or the saleswoman for that company, or the salesperson for that company, you go to yourself, well, I guess pharmacies could buy these. I guess machine shops could buy these. Where do you go? So now you're talking about an SEO strategy with, how are you going to get thousands and thousands of people from who knows where? It's a very different play. And you're not going to, unless somehow you've discovered some weird niche that nobody's going after that you want to target, it's almost an entire inbound play. That's where, it's the opposite end of the spectrum of, I make this unique product. There's 400 companies who need it. How do I get them on my website?
All right. So now you're that creative thinker, right? You talked about the odd stuff and, you going out on those edges. You have unlimited budget. You can do whatever you want. You're a B2B digital marketer. Where will you spend it?
I just embezzle it and go hang out in Tahiti.
I should have known better.
No, I would never do that more than once. No, if I had an unlimited budget, I would focus on user experience and truly understanding the reach of the customer before I did anything else. It doesn't matter if you've got $1 billion spent on a website that doesn't talk in the way that your customer wants to hear, that doesn't show them the value that they would get from doing business with you. It's money wasted. Always take the extra time to spend and really understand as best you can. Now, it doesn't mean you're going to get it right the first time, but you certainly have a much better chance of being able to tweak and grow and mold your marketing message and your value proposition. And again, you go to marketing school and they teach you about, features and benefits, total nonsense. It's benefits. You sell people by benefits, and the features are what prove the benefits are real. Turn the tables on your thinking and stop talking about features and benefits. I know in an interview process, when someone says that to me, as we're looking for people to add to our team, I give them a chance to fix it. And if not, they've disqualified themselves from being a candidate, because they're not going to have those creative ideas that we need to be part of the Fangled team.
And that, folks, and B2B digital marketer to B2B DM gang, is how you build advocates for your B2B brand. Andrew Deutsch, I had a fun time with you today. Can you please share with the B2B digital marketer nation how they can get in touch with you?
Send me a fax. No, this is a digital crowd, right? A telex will work. No, you can find me on LinkedIn with my name, Andrew Deutsch. Go to my website right there, fangledtech.com. Check out my podcast. Just go on YouTube and search all one word, the Fangled Cast, and check out what we do. Thanks so much.
Yes, and Andrew Deutsch, thank you for sharing your knowledge and wisdom, and we wish you the very best.
Thank you for joining us. Go now to join the B2B DM gang in the B2B Marketer LinkedIn group, where you can connect with other B2B DM disruptors and get access to our B2B DM cheat sheets, checklist, and guides. While you're at it, if you found value in this show, please help by going to iTunes to rate, review, and subscribe. And share the show on all of your digital platforms. Be sure to tune in next week for our next episode. And always remember, you can automate your lead capture, but you must lure your lead.